And good afternoon, everybody, and good almost evening. The time changes pretty soon, Sunday, right?
Yes.
The time changes, so stay tuned in when we do the announcements because we don't change in Arizona. All right, so right now we're on the same time zone as California, and I think next week we'll be on the same time zone as everybody in Mountain Standard Time. And California will be 1 hour behind us. So it gets a little confusing. And we'll be 2 hours difference from Florida. Right now we're 3 hours difference. So keep an eye on that time because inevitably, every time the time changes and I put the correct time, we're locked in. I don't know what time I'm going to do it yet for Florida and Arizona. I might keep it at 1 o'clock mine or I might do it at 2. We'll see. So keep you on your toes. All right, you know what I'm going to do? I have 2 organs here today, so we'll see how this works out. Just because I have an EX and an A platform, and I'm going to open up with a song here, and then I'm going to show you what I did up here too, something I think is going to be fancy if this works. Woo! All right, so I'm going to open up with a song, Fly Me to the Moon, in other words. That's the name of the song. And then in parentheses, in other words.
Oh, I thought you were taking off to the moon.
I am going to take off on the Grand Marquis. It takes me off, or no, I'm sorry, the Marquis. Here we go. All right. Let's see. Now, I haven't played this song in a long time. I don't play this song that often. So if I goof up, oh well. You know, we're playing for fun. We're playing for recreational purposes. And I'm going to keep it simple. So anybody out there watching, or if you go back and watch this later, a lot of times I put these out on YouTube or a Patreon. Just remember, it doesn't matter if you make mistakes as long as you're having some fun playing music. And a lot of times I make a mistake, I just laugh it off. So here we go. Thank you. The crowd roars. The crowd roars. You know what's funny is I was playing a little bit of that before I got everybody on, and I didn't use any of the setups that I thought I was going to use. I just decided to choose another one. I went, I kind of like that. So anyway, just I like to keep promoting this, but this was a song out of the All-Star Favorites book. And as you know, we have a big major sale going on. We're calling the Sale of the Century. And we've made a lot of happy people. We've sold over 25 organs so far. And the good news is, I don't know if you see that flyer there. The good news is we are going to extend this. It says through the end of October. We're going to extend this through Sunday, November 3rd. So we've got Royales for $9.99. You're going to get 125% trade-in value. Stardust for $19.99. We've actually had some people buy some of these models for their church or a friend. I know in Arizona, one of the students bought a Royale for a friend that always wanted to play. That's a great gift. It's a fabulous model. And then we have some software packages. The recent ones that I posted, I extended again to the 3rd. The All-Star Faves, 15% off. Greatest Hits, 15% off of that. And then my Song of the Month software suite. And then I have all of the links regarding the 3 most popular countries that participate in Lowrey organs. Today, folks, I'm going to try something a little different if I need to reference the models. So let me switch cameras here. Let's see. Now this is as close as I can get to the TV with having 2 organs set up. So this one I kept on the full screen for now. I may change that, but that's the marquee. Are you ready for this? 3, 2, 1. Let's see if this works. Oh. You see that? Let's go back to this. Ready? Oh. What did you do, Robert, you ask? I don't know. I'm getting all excited about a simple little thing. But what I did is because it may be applicable today, what I did is I have right here, I don't know if you could see it, I have this little switcher, and I plugged in this organ and this organ into the switcher to the video feed. So if I talk about something on here that the screen might look a little different, all I have to do is switch the switch and it'll put it on the screen. Okay? So if you see that, I'll be referencing A and SU at some point, or when I get over here, the EX models, because the screen looks a little bit different in some of depending on what we discussed. But today it might be needed. So we'll see how, as long as it stays and does what it's supposed to do and behaves. All right. So what I wanted to do today is, this is something that is always a great topic to discuss. But when I taught it maybe 3 months ago, I only had 1 organ hooked up. So I wanted to do it again with a couple of the models. And that is, when you think about these instruments, even the first organ that came out that had the concept, the way the rhythm presets work, was before this model came out. What happened was all of the Lowrey organs had, when you put on a rhythm, it had 1 rhythm preset. And then at one time, when the new models came out, on the dashboard where the rhythms were, the top of the line, this was back in 1996, mind you, had 3 rhythm presets. And boy, that was a big deal back in 1996. Because up until that point, when you picked a rhythm, big band, Latin, bossa nova, rumba, you had 1 rhythm preset. And when that organ came out, we said 3, it was like the greatest thing since sliced bread. Now I say that to somebody, they think I'm nuts. What's the big deal of that? And they still had category presets. So that they had. that was new. So in the early days, the 90s, early 90s, all you had was a rhythm preset and 10 presets in between the keys. And if you wanted more presets, you had to convince your staff member to create some more on a floppy disk. And back then, there was no program that easily copy and pasted stuff. It literally took sometimes 10, 15 minutes to copy a floppy disk in the early 90s, a Lowrey formatted disk onto another floppy. And then, I don't know if you remember where in some of the functions of the computer, you have this light going across, this blue bar. And when you know it got to the very end, it was complete. And a lot of times what would happen is it would get to almost the end, and then it would stop, and then you'd have to start all over. So it was a nightmare. It improved a little bit when the LX series came out, and they took this concept of the presets and they added category presets. That's where category presets were introduced. It was an organ called the Celebration. You may have heard of it, maybe not. It's called the Celebration. They had a Promenade, and inevitably the Majesty and what have you. And then when the first model that came out, they took the idea of how category presets work, and they changed rhythm preset. Rhythm preset, when you put on a rhythm now, as you know, if you had a rhythm preset, you get 10 plus the 1, 0, as we talked about in one of the last classes, presets for every style. That was introduced on the organ called the Lowrey Royale. So that was a major deal, because you had 168 rhythms when that organ came out, and each one had 11 presets for every single style. That's over 1,1700 presets. That's a lot of presets. And then gradually over the years, what's happened, even though they had more categories, when you got into the Prestige and then obviously in organs like the Symphony and what have you, they added a rhythm preset and an organ rhythm preset. So that means you have 22 setups for every style. Now, if you had a Prestige as an example, there are 216 or 212, I think is the number. And you have 22 different presets for every style. So if you put on swing band, you got 22 different ways to play it. How that number grew was by adding more styles. So for example, fast forward to the Symphony, there are 260 plus 26. What is that, 286, I want to say? So there are 286 rhythm styles with 22 presets. It's over 5,000. It's a lot of presets. So where am I headed with this? We always encourage use presets. But if you have an organ that you use presets for a long time, at some point you do say to yourself, you know what? I'd like to pick on my own sounds instead of use what's there. What's there is great, but occasionally I like a sound that I get on a preset. And maybe I want to find another sound myself, okay? So I'm going to recap a little bit on how to choose some of your own sounds and how they work. It's similar on both models, and then there's a difference between two models. And that's why I kind of have this screen in case I need to refer to the screen, okay? So let's start with SUA models. I might miss one in here, but models that fit in the SU category are, take a deep breath here, Rhapsody, Royale, Stardust, Sensation, Performer, Grand Royale, Palladium. I think I got all of the touchscreen models. I might have missed one, I'm not sure. On the A models, A technology, you have touchscreen models. Legend Supreme or Floridian, Prestige or Prestige Plus, as some of you may also be aware of, Imperial, Sterling, Patriot, Symphony, and Liberty. Now all of the models with the exception of the Liberty, if you look at the model number, they all start with A and a number, okay? A A5000, A4000, and so forth. The Liberty is LE6500, and that kind of stumps people. And I think originally, don't quote me on this, but I'm almost certain this was the reason, it was a limited edition model that they made, hence LE, limited edition. But basically, it's the A platform, okay? And then on the EX series, that's Marquis, Grand Marquis Aria, RE22, Star Enhancement, Grand Marquis Extreme, and then Inspire and Rialto fall into the EY touchscreen models. Okay, so the SU and the A, the way the sounds are selected and chosen work very similar in the operation. Okay, so here's an example. I'll just pick something here. The one thing that I want to warn, I always warn people in advance, that if you are selecting sounds on the organ yourself, in other words, you're going to choose your own, if you start with a preset, beware that sometimes that preset may have 2 orchestral and 2 solo, and let's just say the 2 solos are on the bottom and the 2 orchestrals are on the top, okay? And the top may have piano and vibes, okay? Now in the SU and the A series, it can fool the ear a little bit, because a lot of times what happens is people will put the 2 on together and they're going, I don't know why, but the piano is much louder than the vibes. Why is that? And then I explain about volumes a little bit and they go, yeah, but I have it here at 100%. Okay? So stay with me on this for a moment, and I don't know if I'm going to go in detail on this part, but if you have 2 sounds on, 2 orchestral sounds on. In this case, I have piano and bells. Let's see. And I'm going to turn off the organ. Okay? Now, when you listen to that, I could actually hear both. Okay? Now, the bells is a little sharper of a sound, so it may stand out, but I could still hear a piano. Sometimes when I do that, after I've chosen a preset, one sound may be stronger, much stronger than the other, and the other one's kind of faint. There's 2 ways to set volumes on these. One is the quick way, which is you have this little orchestral volume right here. So on this model here, I have just 2 red buttons. But if you have an SU or an A with all the red buttons, the concept is the same. They just have all of the sounds listed, what we call the quick picks, which you can still get to here. Okay? But when I have the 2 sounds on, right now, let me do that again. Let me do this again. And they actually sound about even. So when you push the 2 together, one will be solid and one will be blinking. Okay, now there's a reason for that. All right, but right now I have the 2 solid. That just means that one can go to the bottom if we assign it to the bottom. But the volume for this orchestral section is at 100%. Okay? Now, internally, I want to say internally, when Bill Curry programmed all these presets, how many did I say were on here? 22 times 200, it's over 5,000 presets. It's a lot of presets. He didn't just pick 2 sounds and go, okay, that's the sound I'm going to use there. Sometimes he digs a little deeper. And this I'm going to recommend for those of you who like to go and dig in a little bit and explore, okay? If you don't, just push the 2 on together and play it, you know. But so I'm going to put the screen up here, and then I'm going to come back to general button pushing. Let's see if I got the right one on. All right. Nope, wrong screen. All right, magical switcher. I entertain myself sometimes. Okay. So let's see what screen. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press the feature button, and the first thing you'll see there says levels. Oh, wait. Put the correct screen. Okay, you see that? It says levels and balance. Now, I can do an entire class just on this. I'm gonna do the Reader's Digest version and then encourage you to get with your personal assistants after you try it and if you have any questions, okay? Now, you'll see there it says Orchestral and Solo. You see that? Now, look look, I'm going to touch it and you're going to see it. You see right there? Orchestral 1, orchestral 2. So right now I have both the bells and the piano selected, and they're both at 100%. So that's why we could hear it so easily. Now, I'll say this, try to say this whereas it's simply understood as possible. I don't know if I said that right. I feel like I was grammatically incorrect there. Well, that's okay. When you have two red buttons selected, SU and A models, okay, one is solid, one is blinking. We got that point. Okay, the one that's considered orchestral 1 and 2 that you saw, orchestral 1 is the solid one. Orchestral 2 is the one that's blinking. And I say that because if you happen to have two Genius buttons on like I have right now, I have Orchestra Genius 1 and Orchestra Genius 2. Coincidentally, the Orchestra Genius 1 is solid and the 2 is blinking. Now if I do it in reverse by pressing 2 first, and then I press 1, the blinking one is 1 and the solid one is 2. So the reference up here is going to be whatever one is solid is considered the orchestral 1, and the one that's blinking is considered orchestral 2. Now that may seem like a kind of a brain teaser. Okay, like what? Just remember that when you have two red buttons on, for those of you who have that, the one that's solid is considered orchestral 1, and the one that's blinking is considered orchestral 2. All right? So for the sake of it, I'm just going to match it accordingly. And I'm going to go to the screen so you can see this here. And then we'll jump over in the other organ here in just a few, so we accommodate everyone here. So you'll see, so my solid one is the piano, and my blinking one is the bells. So you can see they're all at 100. All right? Now here's the orchestral 2, which happens to be the bells. And I'm going to leave it there, and I'm just going to press and hold a note a couple times. And as I'm playing the note, I'm going to decrease the volume. Can you hear the bells now? Anybody can speak. Anybody hear the bells?
It sounds the same no matter what level you're at.
Well, I could barely hear, but here's the difference. Now watch. Let me bring it up to 100. Does the bell stand out a little more? Let's choose a different one here because the bells tends to be a little high. Let me pick. I know which one to do. I don't know that you'd do this combination, but we'll do it just so you could hear the. I am choosing. I'm going to choose. I would suggest using these two sounds together, but for the sake of the lesson here. All right, here we go. So here's a piano and a trumpet. Okay, the trumpet's pretty strong. Now watch. Oops. You ever push the wrong button? Maybe not you. Okay, here we go. Can you kind of hear the trumpet in there now? Or is it kind of faint? It's there, but it's soft. Now keep in mind it's 0 to 100. Now if I go all the way up, back to 100%, you got the trumpet really stands out. Now if I turn that down all the way to say 50, you probably still hear the trumpet. I don't know if you can tell on Zoom, but the trumpet is much softer in that case. So, and it's going to depend on the sound combinations, because some sounds are very similar. Like I was going to choose piano and vibes, but even though they're two totally different sounds, the tonal quality of those two instruments together, they tend to be a little too close, unless you turn the volume down all the way. So here's piano and vibes. I can barely hear the vibes there. Now I'm going to, put it back on the vibes. Okay, so piano and vibes. Now I'm going to bring it up to 100%. And let's hear them both together at 100%. Can you tell the piano vibes combination? But that's a very common sound. It's used with harmonies and George Shearing type sounds. So, but some sounds are going to be totally different. You know, if you put on like a clarinet and a flute, you have to really turn them down to be able to tell. Now, that's how you can get into the individual balancing. Again, SU and A series. But here's the part, and I'll say this a couple times, so if you have a similar model, it makes sense. So if you're choosing your own sounds, and you start with a preset, what I was starting to say when I got into this was, a lot of times those numbers that you saw on the screen are preset for you. So Bill Curry may have a preset, you know, with a big band, and let's say big band. Let me just put on the screen and glance here, just out of curiosity. So here's an example. You won't see it, but the orchestral 1 and 2 and whatever sound that's in here is at 100%. Okay. Solo 1's at 90 and solo 2's at 100. Well, there's a reason why he did that. It could have been just balancing the sounds so it works with that harmony in that case. Okay? Now, here's the simplified version of how these sounds, how to get these sounds and put them into the instrument. Okay? Or assign them to the keyboard. So earlier I said if you have two, you have a solid and a blinking, okay? Depending on how you have this set will determine where those sounds go. Now what I did is when I did a power up organ sound, this is a good way to experiment. We always say just turn on the organ, okay? And then turn off your two flute tabs. The flute tabs that come up are usually this organ sound. Just come up and turn off those two flute tabs. And the reason why we say this is just get in the habit of changing sounds so you understand what you're doing, so that if you decide to put on a preset and go, yeah, I like that, but let me change that. And a lot of times you change it and you don't hear it because there's something else going on. So I got that off. There's no sound on here. Now I have the red and the two reds on. One is piano, one is vibes. So let's put on the upper. You can kind of tell the vibes in the piano. They're very similar in tonal quality. So now if I have the upper on and the two buttons are lit, that means both sounds are on the upper keyboard. If I put the lower right on and that's the only thing that I have on, they're both on the lower right. Okay? Now, for the sake of it, I'm going to put it back to the factory where I have the bells and the piano comes up to that. Let's see. Turn those off. Put the two on together. Okay? So now I'm going to put lower right. Now they're both down here. All right? Now, if I push upper and lower, simply what happens is whatever sound is solid is on the top, and whatever one is blinking is on the bottom. So I should have a piano and bells. And that's coming from the orchestral section. The same concept works with the solo section. Okay? So if you have the two on together, you have upper on, or lower right, or if you put both, the one that's solid is going to go on the top and the one that's blinking is going to go on the bottom. Now this one here, there's one button I didn't mention, okay? And that is, there's a button that says lower left. Now lower left is a little trickier. When I play, a lot of times I play chords because C, F, G, A, they're just easy chords. And then when I get to an E flat or a B flat, you know what I do? I just reach up and hit one. I can do it, but sometimes I have to think a little bit. And I don't like to. I just like to hit B flat. I know it's B flat, you know, or A, E flat. For some reason, all my life, I've always learned E flat over here when I should do it over here where I keep my left hand, okay? So when I play, for the most part, I play chords, but I occasionally do the one-finger chords. Well, here's where I'm going with this. You'll notice on all of your models with the touchscreens, in most models even, in the center you have your lower tabs. To the left over here, you have your flute tabs and some strings and then a lower genius or lower sound. Those sounds are typically commonly used in the lower left keyboard. Okay? Now, depending on if you have the easy button on or not, and most of the time it's on if you're using a rhythm, if you put on, what the easy button does essentially is it activates, so I should even take it a step further, it activates MCS. Okay? So a lot of times I'll get the phone call, I put on a rhythm and the easy button is not on. Well, that doesn't have to be. When you put on the easy button, it turns on auto bass, MCS, and memory. Well, when you put on a rhythm, guess what? It does the same thing. It picks auto bass, MCS, and a memory. Okay? MCS is the easy play chord system for Lowrey. So any sound that I use down here, whether I'm using a rhythm or not, if I got strings and organ, it doesn't matter. Let me go back to the power up setting here. When I have that MCS on, it's going to give me the easy play chord system on the lower left. So right now I have, let me turn it off. I'm playing my own chords. Okay? I'll put on some strings. Turn it up a little bit. Okay, I'm having to play. Now if I put on MCS by itself, it's giving me the one finger chords. The easy play chord system. Okay? Back to over here. So in your orchestral section, you have a sound that says lower left. Lower left will take any sound that you have here. Let's say I put piano and bells. The solid one is piano. Okay, and the or I'll do it in reverse. I'll put the blinking one as the piano and the solid one as the bells. Okay, so I have upper and lower left on. So what's happening now is the one that's blinking, which happens to be a piano, is now down here. However, unless you are a full chord player all the time, I would not encourage putting orchestral sounds into your left hand because you have to play the chord. The MCS will not affect. Now watch, let me turn off these sounds in the lower here. Okay, here's the piano from the orchestral. Here's the chord. Now here's MCS. Still playing only one note. So that's why you'll commonly hear when people ask us, there's a, pulling these sounds into the lower here. Can I do that? Yes, but only if you're a traditional chord player all the time is it going to be beneficial. Otherwise, you're just going to get that. Okay? So even if I have the MCS, now I'm going to put on some strings here. The strings is doing the one finger chord because it's coming from this lower. So if I put on a rhythm, let's put on Frank and the Count. Let me cut off some of the background here. Now watch. I'm going to turn up the left hand. Do you hear the string holding? Watch. A lot of you know that as the hum. Okay? Well, that sound is coming from here. Listen as I play a one-finger chord. You're going to hear a one note popping in there. Ready? It's kind of faint because I have a lot going on. It's just playing one note over here. So, moral of the story is, these sounds can be placed over into the left, as it says, but they work best if you're playing your own chords, and you can experiment with that. If you're kind of one of those like me that kind of goes back and forth, I would just use these sounds for your upper and lower right for the melody. Okay? Now, when we're done with this class, and you go onto your organ and you say, you know what, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to do what he says. Do it your way. Whatever works for you. But you'll know, if you do it and it sounds okay to your ears, go for it. Have some fun. Okay? Now, so that's a little bit of how the settings work. Now, there is an option here that some people are aware of, you may not be aware of, and then I'll jump over to the left here for a little bit. It's very similar. Okay, let me just do this. All right. So you can see this screen. Let's see if I got the right screen on. Oh, I got the wrong screen on. Here we go. All right. Can you kind of see that okay? It might be a little pixelated, but that's okay. See where it says Genius, Solo 1, Solo 2? So a lot of the organs have different ways of seeing what's programmed in your Genius buttons. Okay? So, for example, I'll come back to the screen here. So right on this model here, what happened was when Lowrey introduced the Sterling, was the first one that did this, and this panel, this concept, they want to eliminate all of the buttons and give us 2 reds and 2 blues because that's the most you can put on at a time. And then they put this little window here, and it tells you what's programmed in these orchestrals and solos. But prior to that, and continued on to here, they have an option that you can see what's programmed in every button that says Genius. And Genius is basically a button or a tab that gives you access to all of the sounds for either your left hand or your right hand, okay? So if you're playing and you don't want to push buttons while you're doing it, okay? Let me pull up the screen here. And let me just show you this in 2 steps because I got to switch to video. So on your left panel here, if you have one window on your organ, this is a similar look that you have. You have Song Setup, USB, Genius, Keypad, and Stylus. Almost all of the SUs and the A's have that Genius button. Not all of them has the Stylus, but the one I'm going to be referring to is the Genius. So when you press that Genius button, now let me switch to the screen so you see this. Before I press it, I'm going to switch to the screen. When you press the Genius button, this will show up. And all this is telling you is that that's what's programmed in the solo Geniuses. That's what's programmed in the orchestral Geniuses, this lower Genius, and then the upper Genius. That's all that's telling you. So you know it's there in advance. Okay? So if you're playing along and you're just you hear stuff going on, you go, what sounds are they using? Sometimes we don't know by looking on the panel because the Genius buttons are constantly being used. Well, there's windows to help you to do that. This window will tell you that. Okay? Now on the EX models, you have a similar window. Okay? And I have to do the full screen for this. So you'll see that the top is like what most of the organs have, and the right is like what most of the has. If I take that off, we're back to the home screen. Now this bottom panel here, now I got it cut off at the bottom here, but right at the very bottom here, there's a button right here that says Sounds. And I know some of you have a couple extra buttons here, but there's one that says Sounds, Ensemble, and Theater. So ensemble are these tabs. Theater is if you want to use the theater. Okay? And then when I press this one right there, sound, it's similar, but it just took it a little step further, and it tells you what every sound is programmed on any given preset that I push. And they're kind of color coded. Okay? So if I push, I'll just push something. Let me just see. I'll push number 8. So preset number 8, it tells me what's in the golden harp. The red buttons are the orchestrals. Your blues are your solos. The lower left, the upper, what's in the theater. And they're all color coded. The green is what's programmed in the sound effects, what's in the pedal. And it's just a good thing to have if you're ever curious. I don't always have this screen on, believe it or not. A lot of times I'm just playing, pushing presets. But when I hear something, I go, wow, I like what combination did they use? I'll just turn that screen on and I'll look. Okay, now there's multiple ways of doing it. All right. So that's just, it's similar to the Genius, only they added more on the screen, if you will. Now, trying to fit both organs in in this camera angle here. So this panel, by the way, I have a lot of students especially over the last 4 years that went from an A platform to an E, and because it looks so different, a lot of times the first thought process is, oh my gosh, I got to relearn everything. I got to relearn. I'll do a couple. Is that camera angle okay? But the reality is they may have taken the red buttons away, but they're really labeled the same. So when you had 2 red buttons over there you choose from, well, it's the same concept. The difference is you have Orchestral 1, Orchestral 2. On the A and the SU platform, Orchestral 1 and 2 is when you have the 2 pressed together. And if you remember earlier, what I said was the solid is considered Orchestral 1 and the blinking is considered Orchestral 2. Okay, so that conceptually is the same. The difference is this. For those of you who have, and this is actually on the Rialto, I know you Rialto owners out there, Inspire, okay, is each one is separate on its own. So if I go up to the power up setting, same way, turn on the organ, I'm going to turn off I get this organ sound. Guess I got to be patient. Oh, yes. Okay. So I get this organ sound. I turn those 2 off. Nothing on. So Orchestral 1, Orchestral 2, normally I don't have to push 2, but I have a couple options. I can pull up the screen like I showed you, or there's a button that says sounds, and it tells me when I press it, it'll just show up on the screen. So that's nice, okay? And the same thing here. And so right now it says piano on Orchestral 1 and bells on Orchestral 2, okay? Now nothing is on, okay? Now in the Orchestral 1, I had a piano sound, I said, right? Now someone tell me where to put that, on the upper or lower right. Now I can also put it on the lower left, but you know how I feel about that, so don't say lower left. So just call it out. Upper or lower right?
Upper.
Okay, so I have a Orchestral 1 on the sound. If I want to get in the upper, I'm just going to simply push the button in that section that says upper. Plain and simple. Okay? Now, the next one is bells on Orchestral 2. Upper or lower right or both?
Both.
Both? Okay. So here's how I do this. Pay very close attention. This is very tricky. I want it on the upper and the lower right, correct? Is that what you said, Sue?
Correct.
Okay. Oh, that was you, Karen.
Yes.
Okay. So I got to follow your rules. I have to see Karen once or twice a week. So if I don't do what she asks once in a while, she complains and whines. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so here we go. I want it on the upper, so I'm going to push upper. I want it on the lower right, so I'm going to push the lower right button. That's it. Okay? Okay? I can take it a step further. In the solo 1, I have currently a clarinet mellow, and a solo 2, I have whistle. I can choose to put those sounds, same thing. If I want the clarinet on the upper, I can. I don't know that I would put that combination, but you could do it. Or the whistle is the. So basically, you just choose upper or lower, wherever that sound is going. Now, as far as the balances go, kind of what I was saying earlier, because a lot of times we push a preset, we're playing along, we have a preset on, we go, I kind of like that, let me choose my own. Just be aware of what you have on. Each section has its own volume control. So just be conscious of that. You see what you got. You may see 4 buttons on, and what happens, the common is there's 4 of them on being used to create whatever preset that was, and then they go and they change one of them to something else, and they go, I can't hear it, because there's a bunch of other sounds on to make that preset, so you may have to turn off a few just to isolate that one sound. Okay? So now, I'm going to take it a step further. And I only want to do this because I wanted to do it a few months ago, but I didn't have an organ like this to do it. So this organ, the flute tabs. So you got your upper and you got your lower. I thought it was the coolest thing that Lowrey, I feel like I want to take credit for this, but I will never get credit. Because for years I always said, why don't they make it so they can do this? And then I always got a different response to why they never did that. Well, it's really because it's because, you know. And then one day, when the marquee came out, I was like, oh, they finally took my advice. But I didn't get anything for that. Not even a thank you or a check. I'm probably not the only one who said it. So Lowrey's probably listened over the years and said, yeah, let's do that. So here's what I'm talking about. These flute tabs are great. You get all sorts. I'm going to turn off all of the sounds. You got some great organ sound. Oh, turn on the flute tabs here. You can get, and the trick to the flute tabs, if you want to experiment, leave the 16-foot flute. This works for anybody. Start off with a 16 and then just kind of pick any other combination. Flute tab, I'll put it on the jazz setting, okay? You can do any setting. Keep 16 on and just randomly hit any one. 16 and 8 and then followed by a bunch of others is always going to assure you a decent organ sound. But you could, even if you don't do the 8, but keep the 16 on. It gives you the low end. Now watch. Watch this. I'm just randomly hitting tabs. Randomly hitting tabs. Ready? Let's see how we got it. You almost never fail with a good organ sound. But I get a lot of people that say, but Robert, you know, I want to play, I like those organs, but I don't always want an organ sound when I play. Well, traditionally, the organ sounds are always up here. Now, you can get an organ sound in the lower right. Okay? Anybody can. Because in your orchestral, and all of the models, as you know, in the Genius, you have more than one sax, you have saxophones, you have clarinets, you have strings, you have lots of strings, a bunch of different vocal sounds. You got a lot of different things to choose from. There's a group of sounds that are called organ. It might be organ B something, organ tremolo, organ. They have different words for those, and they're pre-programmed organ sounds that are inside, okay? So that can still be done. But a lot of times what I like to do is create my own. I just put on the 16-foot flute, and then I'll do something like. And I go, yeah, that's pretty cool. But that's not going to be my dominant sound to play the song. Maybe when I'm playing the song, I might want to use it occasionally. So maybe I want piano and organ, just a nice little combination with a rhythm, okay? Well, I don't want this little bit of a space. Here's a piano, lower right. I want more room for my piano, okay? I don't want to be restricted. And so this is what I have to work. Now, some people, well, you can move the split. Well, I don't want to have to make those kind of sacrifices. I guess my ego's too big. I want it all. So what I'd like to have is maybe my piano is my dominant sound and then use an organ sound. So real simply, in this example, I have a piano that's on the lower. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to put it on the upper. Okay? Now, the flute tabs are also on the upper. That's not a bad combination, by the way, but maybe I don't want that. I want just piano and I want the organ here. You go over here and there's a tab sound here, or tab labeled tabs to lower right. And all that means is that when I activate that, whatever you have programmed here is now going in the lower right. So I have just that, piano. Maybe I turn off the upper tabs and the lower tabs to lower right. So I have let me put on a rhythm here. Doing a little Chicago swing. Here we go. So I could have that as a secondary sound, and my piano is the one that I really want to use. Okay. Now, because you have that lower those tabs down there, you can still put other sounds on the bottom. Remember, I kind of hinted, well, that's actually not a bad combination. Piano and organ is a very good combination. So I can put upper and lower right. So I have a piano here, and down here I have the piano with the okay. So just some little fun little things that you can do with searching for sounds. My goal today was that no matter if you had an SU, an A, an EY or EX touchscreen model, that you got some basic instruction on how to find a sound, know where it's going, and where to put it. So hopefully I accomplished that today. Okay?
Great.
Now, any questions about, I made a big boo-boo like I always do. I always think, you know what, this is only going to take me 20 minutes. I'm going to have so much time extra, and I'm not going to know what to do. Maybe if I'll have the people ask questions. And then I looked and went, even though I started late, I still went an hour. So anyway, any questions?
Robert,
Yes.
you have to remember also when you do that tabs to lower, that on the screen, anything that's in the upper ensemble, they will also go to the lower.
That's correct.
Along with the
Thanks for
flutes.
pointing it out. So let me pull up this. Well, actually, before I pull it up, so on all of the ASU models, as you know, or maybe you don't know, maybe you know, you'll see all the organ tabs. You'll see that right here there's 3 yellow string tabs. Okay, these are great sounds. And I'll say it over and over. If you're ever playing, you have a piano, organ, trumpet, trombone, and you're looking for something to combine, and you're not sure what to do, just reach up and hit one of these string tabs with sustain, and it's a great blend. Okay? So here's an organ sound. Oh, let me turn off the bells. And let me put on 16-foot strings to sustain. Ready? They all work. Let me turn off the organ, and let me put on the bells. That's not bells. Now watch this. I'm going to add strings. I'll put 8-foot strings with sustain. It just works with almost anything. So for years, those, I like to call them ensemble strings, have always been put here with the organ tabs, okay? So when the newer models came out, you know, the concept was really still the same. The difference is the yellow tabs weren't here. They kind of separated them and put them in the middle. I have a theory, and my theory is we commonly told people over the years, if you're ever playing along and you want to just add something, reach up and hit your symphonic string. So I think they put it kind of front and center because that's something that's commonly, it's like a go-to sound to add to whatever you're playing. You got piano on, you want to add something, you're not sure what's going to work, you never add 16 or 8 foot strings. You got a clarinet and you want to add something to it. You remember earlier when I had trumpet and piano and I was like, that's not a good, if you have a trumpet on, you put 8 foot strings, it's probably going to work. So even though that they're not combined, they're still considered the tabs. So what happens is if you got this organ sound, let me turn off the piano, but I got the organ sounds here. If you put on these string tabs, they also go on that lower right as well. So just something to keep in mind. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I got another question if nobody else does.
Okay.
Last night I was working with the volume levels in the orchestra 1, 2, solo 1, 2, and also with on the feature screen, feature number 1, the sound levels. And if I was changing the volume on with using the buttons on the right panel, I could see the volume changing on the screen. Orchestra 1, Orchestra 2, Solo 1, Solo 2. Or vice versa. If I changed it on the screen, I could see the volume lights on the panel changing.
Yes.
Now, my question is, on the left-hand side for the lower sounds volume, left side of the panel,
Over here?
right at the very left. Nope, the volume button. Nope, left. The left panel.
The left panel?
Keep going left. Yep, left there. The lower sounds volume level.
Yes.
Is that not tied into the lower sounds tab?
It's probably tied in, if I had to guess, it's tied into these here.
Not including the lower sounds tab? Genus button lower sounds
Well, there's
tab.
one way to find out.
Because I was changing the volume and it wasn't changing on the screen and vice versa.
Okay,
But
so
yet the
here's,
sound, but the
all right.
volume was changing.
Well, let me turn off all this stuff. And take that organ off. Let me put on just the piano. Okay. String sounds. Okay. All right. So let's put on down here. What do I have? A piano? Let me just see something here. I have a theory, but I just want to prove my theory right before I say it so I don't look bad on Zoom. Okay. So the answer is, what was the question? Say the
When
question.
I changed the lower sounds volume level using the buttons on the left panel, is that not affecting on the screen the lower volume?
Okay, so you have, it looks like 2. Okay, so what I did, let me pull up the screen here. Okay, so what I did is I pulled up the screen like I did earlier, levels, balance, and it was, defaults to that, okay?
Right.
Now, if you touch this wait, this one, I'm sorry. If you touch these and you scroll them on the dashboard, you'll see them changing.
Yes.
But if you go to, for example, here, lower,
right.
You'll see that it has a separate volume control for the flutes, a separate volume control for the string set. That's the tab strings here.
Okay.
Okay. A separate volume control for the sounds. Now the sounds is located on the tab right for everybody's sake, I'm just going to point to it right there. Okay.
Yes.
And then you have one that said, what did it say? Theater. Okay. And that is an individual volume control for this lower theater section. Okay.
Right.
So
right.
you can essentially change the individual volume to balance them however you want. And then while you're playing or not playing or however you want, it takes those individual volumes and this lower tab will increase or decrease everything that's in the lower, up and down.
So it's in, okay, all of them as a group
Correct.
at the same time it's
It's
increasing.
basically
Okay.
taking everything together. So if I had piano, organ, string, theater, all four of those on, and I went in and I said, I don't want the theater to be this, I want the piano to be, I want the strings, I have them all set. Now, they're all set at different volumes. Well, if I go over here, so I put all those on, even the theater, doesn't matter, wherever I have it set. Now when I go over here and I use this volume control, it's doing all of those.
Everything. Okay.
So you have the ability to end it. You could say, well, I want my left hand sound to be, I like it that loud, but the strings is too strong. Well, then you can go in and
A lot
isolate.
of times Joni and Don say to put a certain sound into the lower sound so that you can hear the chord changes better. And then they say turn up the lower sound's volume using the buttons. But if you have other tabs on for the lower, they're all going up at the same time anyway, so you're still not
Exactly.
hearing
So
it. You got to go
you have to go in
you
and
have to go to
choose.
the screen.
Yeah, and then you go
Okay.
in and
Okay.
if you're going to go all that work, then start saving it on a preset.
Oh yeah, I do that all the time.
I'm saying that for all the others. I know who
Yeah.
you are.
Okay.
Save presets. I'm
Okay.
always telling students, save presets. Memorize a number. Jeannie, are you saving presets yet?
No,
You're supposed to just say yes and let everybody pretend you know what you're doing.
I'm working on it.
All right. Okay. So that's all I got for you today. I hope it was worth coming today. Hope you learned something. I taught something today for all the models. All right. It was a trick, but I think I had a little fun in just knowing that I can go whoop, hit the switch. So anyway, I won't keep you any further. I want to say thank you. And last week's class, by the way, I did record. I have a couple classes to record. I had to go back and edit, and I've just been really busy, and I have not gone back to cut out certain parts that don't need it. So it hasn't been posted online yet. So if you're curious, that's why. Okay. So anyway, with that said, keep playing music every day. Stay safe. Go out and buy an organ, a software package. I got to throw that in there.
Yeah,
You know, it's okay to buy another organ for another room in the house, buy it for a friend, or just buy it
Yeah.
for the sake of buying it. You know, it feels good sometimes just buying stuff, right?
it does.
Okay.
Well,
Anyway,
good
thank you
subject.
so much. And see you guys real soon. Mwah.
Okay, bye.
Good subject for today.
Thank you. Woo.